All right, YouTube. I still had some confused lefties, actual leftists, as well, sort of the fringe of the salon crowd, the Bernie Sandersites or Warrenites or something, along with some confused nationalists, actually, that have persisted in saying that the United States capitalism is bad and the United States is capitalism and therefore that's why we're screwed and so forth. I will try to point this out again in more simplistic terms so that people who don't get it can understand it. You do not operate under free market capitalism if you're paying out more than a third of all of your productivity. You do not operate under free market capitalism if for any given action, service, or good you have to have expensive government issued licenses and follow government issued dictates and regulations. Most of the time, that further productivity is also taxed. And especially, here's the most important point: it is not a free market, and you are not under capitalism if the government can look at two businesses. Let's use a simple example. Let's say there are two steel refineries. I own a steel refinery in buttfuck middle of nowhere. My competitor also owns a steel refinery in buttfuck middle of nowhere. The government taxes us both. Let's say we're comparably sized businesses. We're comparably efficient. Things are basically the same between us. We hire a similar number of workers. We produce a similar amount of refined steel used for similar purposes. Now let's say the government that is taking both of our productivity and the productivity of both of our workers, by the way, at the same time and double dipping on our actual business ventures, needs more refined steel. So they need to award somebody a grant to expand to produce more refined steel. Now they give me a grant to produce more refined steel. What do I now have? I have a significant and undeserved competitive advantage over my competitor in the region for no purpose other than I shook some politician's hand or donated to a political campaign or something along those lines. Or my politics or my social views happen to align more closely with whatever party happens to control the purse strings at the time. That's not free market capitalism. Under a free market, competition is supposed to be maximized. If the government can eliminate competition by unduly influencing the private market, it's not capitalism, it's interventionism. It's as simple as that. If the government can take a third of everybody's income, or almost everybody's income, it even taxes the very poor with its payroll tax, which is the most retarded system that we have in force today. It takes a huge proportion of everyone's income and spends a great deal of that on endeavors that could be privatized. They could be part of the private market. Now, I will say this. I am not an ANCAP. I'm not a privatize everything libertarian. I'm also not an eliminate all safety net libertarian. I do understand the virtue of giving to those who do not have, under any circumstances, even the most optimistic free market scenario during a boom time, the ability to fully care for themselves, especially if they happen to have children or some other dependent, a demented relative or something like that. I understand that. I'm not a heartless individual. I think some of these folks, if they're full ANCAP, it's not that they're heartless so much as they don't have a reason. They're not compelled to believe that such a thing should exist. I can understand that there are scenarios in which that would be helpful. The type of libertarian I am, though, is we should eliminate all welfare spending that currently exists, every welfare-related bureau, and replace it with a guaranteed income. I understand that this will raise prices, but it will also level the playing field for the very poor. I would be more comfortable with that because you've gotten rid of the regulations associated with welfare, so you have a more free people. You've gotten rid of the bureaus, which means it's going to be a hell of a lot more efficient. You don't need significant paperwork for it or anything along those lines. It will be cheaper. You'll save a lot of money as a nation. The tax rate could feasibly be put down, including the business tax rate, which means that the prices won't actually skyrocket. It's as simple as that. It's a simple solution. It will work. It can be tried. If it totally fucks up, well, I guess it's back to the drawing board. I do believe that people who, they're fucked up in some way, yeah, they should have the ability to continue at least living. Do they have a right to get rich on the taxpayer dole? No. But if you know anything about the welfare system, you know that doesn't tend to happen anyway. People who think that individuals routinely are buying lobster dinners with food stamps or something, yeah, that's it's not sensible. It's not sane. It doesn't really happen. There are people who leech the system. They do exist. People who don't need to be on welfare but are. People who just freeload, basically societal needs or something like that. I understand that. But at the same time, most of those people, yeah, they have like kids. They're living in a trailer or something. Who cares, really? But to blame capitalism for that poverty, when we live under a system that's not capitalism, and it's plainly not capitalism, it's obviously not capitalism, is retarded. We also don't live under socialism, though. We can't blame socialism for our problems any more than we can blame capitalism or communism or anything else. We need to blame big government interventionism for our problems. And it takes a sort of malleable form, a sort of weird fusion form where some things are private, some things are public, some things are intervened in, other things aren't. And so you have the illusion of both capitalism and socialism. It actually works very well for the reigning two-party system because they can each look at the partition of the economy that is either regulated or deregulated, either privatized or not privatized, blame that for all of society's problems. In reality, it's the very existence of such a fusion system that's the problem. You would ultimately, I hate to say this, you would ultimately be more efficient under a completely socialized system than the fusion system that we use now. But you would be at maximum efficiency with a much more free market. Now, does this mean that every single human endeavor should be privatized? No. Our Constitution provides for certain abilities under the government. It has to be able to carry them out. But what it does not provide for is the government enforcing moral laws, the government attempting to regulate what individuals in a private and voluntary manner can do with their lives, regulating who they can screw, regulating what pets can they own, what kind of house can they live in, what services do they have to purchase, do they have to have this type of insurance or that sort of coverage, licensing fees for everything under the sun. You want a lemonade stand, you need a business license. No, the government does not have the power to do these things. They are all unconstitutional. The fact that they haven't been declared as such is because the court system is slow, number one. Number two, most people in our society have been cucked into believing that that's actually the way things are supposed to function. That's the exact opposite of how they're supposed to function in the Americas. We left Europe. We fought our own government for a reason. The British government wanted to be able to levy wanton taxes for no reason, wanted to be able to confiscate people's firearms at a moment's notice, and in general wanted to control most aspects of their subjects' lives. The people who revolted against this wanted to be citizens of a country. They didn't want to be subjects of some foreign power especially, but also a power that really didn't care what they thought and threatened to shoot them if they didn't listen to the rules as they happened to be laid forth. That's the point of the United States. It's how we were founded in the first place. We were founded by a bunch of drunken dudes with military armaments who revolted against their own government, largely over taxation problems, which were far more scant than even the lowest level of taxes we have today, by the way, and who were going to be disarmed by that same military force, that also wanted to occupy their country perpetually in a militarized state, which I argue that we operate under now as well. It's another thing. Why are we spending so much money on that crap? Why don't we just stop that too? We do need a freer system. We need more freedom in general. I'm not just talking about fiscally. I'm not just talking about on the economic side that involves capitalism or socialism or whatever it involves. I'm talking about moral laws too. I don't think there should be any form of regulation insofar as moral policing would go. None. Not a single law at the federal or state level, or at the municipal level, like localities, cities, whatever it happens to be. There should be no moral laws. People should be able to associate with who they wish to associate with, do business with who they wish to do business with. They should be able to go to bed with who they want. They should be able, if they want to have a home that's not heated, let them have an unheated home. If they don't want to wear their seatbelt, okay, let them get ejected from their vehicle. It's one less moron in the world. It's as simple as that. It's like, saw a post yesterday from somebody that I know in regards to Florida, and some city down there wants to make helmets mandatory for motorcycle riders. Why? If they get flung from their vehicle and crack their skull, it's only hurting them. It's not going to save anybody else around them just because they happen to survive in a vegetative state because they were wearing a helmet rather than having their head torn half off by road rash. It doesn't affect anybody but themselves. I would say, let them go helmetless if they want to. Who cares? They're big people. They're adults. We're not talking about little kids on a bike wearing a bike helmet. We're talking about people riding a motorcycle, and it's a little bit different. No, it's absolutely pointless to have government so pervasive in our lives. If government permeates virtually every aspect of your existence, you do not live under a free market system. You also don't live in a free nation. We're kind of not free anymore. We haven't been in over a century. It's not like it's a new thing. It's been a long time since we had capitalism in the Western world. That's the reason for our problems. Either be honest with people, call yourselves socialists and say we're regulating everything, we're going to centrally plan now and fuck up your economy and disarm all of you. Either be honest with people, or go back to the way things were back when they actually worked. Get out of people's lives. You don't need to be in their bedroom. You don't need to be spying on their computer. You don't need to be in their car with them to hold their hand like little children. The government doesn't need to be somebody's mama or dada. That's not the purpose of governance. The purpose of governance in the Americas was to provide the rudiments of social order and then get out of the way. That is the best system that could possibly exist. Again, I'm not saying screw the poor, haha, I've got mine. What I'm saying is that bureaucratic efficiency is generally highest when there's no bureaucracy, number one. Number two, the government currently spends a lot of money fucking with the economy by giving out contracts, by giving out grants that don't need to be given out. It's not necessary. The private market's perfectly capable of supplying the goods that the government needs for its projects, infrastructure, whatever it happens to be. It doesn't need to tax anybody as much as it does. A lot of times people say, oh, the rich should be taxed less because they're at 30%. Oh, the poor should be taxed less because they're poor. Now, everyone should be taxed less. That's the point. It's not an either-or argument of, oh, whose taxes do we lower or raise? So often we get fed this bullshit line. Somebody's taxes have to go up. No, they don't. They should all go down. A lot of these taxes should be eliminated outright. There shouldn't be a property tax. It shouldn't exist. There should be an income tax instead. That's acceptable. There's no problem with an income tax, but a property tax, that's called rent to the government. Just because they call it a tax doesn't mean you're not paying rent. Makes the government your landlord. It's a crazy idea. It's stupid. The idea of a payroll tax. Oh yeah, you make basically minimum wage. We're going to take a little bit of your income and then hold it for you, and then somehow you'll get some of it back, maybe, or a little bit more. It's not exactly clear sometimes. It's so convoluted. And the IRS doesn't need to exist. Half the alphabet soup agencies shouldn't exist. No, we are not a free market. Blaming your problems on capitalism when you're not operating under capitalism is crazy. It would be like blaming magical space Nazis for your problem. It's a bit like when religious people blame Satan when they do something wrong. There's no Satan causing you to do wrong. There's no capitalism causing people to be poor in the United States. We don't operate under a free market. It's just not real. When people say, oh, you're making the same claim as communists who say real communism's never been tried, you can look through and you can find examples of groups of people who at times have operated under communism. You can also find situations under which capitalism has operated. The United States used to operate under capitalism until the Gilded Era. That's when it went out the window because of carpetbagging and corporatism. Once that took hold, then the progressives came and said, oh, we'll solve this problem. And then government became too powerful, and the rest is history. TDR, for all of his virtue, for all of his strength, and for all of the good things he did, helped to usher in the worst of what the United States could be through the progressive era. He had the right idea, but he went about it wrong. Still a great president, still a great man, but ultimately part of the blame lies on him and Taft. That would be my estimation. And later on, of course, you have all of these other various figures building up the military complex. FDR was the worst. He's the most responsible of all. The fusion system we had in between the Progressive era and perhaps the Second World War could have worked, but we abandoned that too. We decided we needed even more socialism and more taxation. It's crazy. That's about all. Peace out.